yes, Circuit Court of Rockdale County is now back in session. Honorable Joe Walker presiding. There be no outburst while court's going on. Please be seated.
We were waiting on 3 additional family members to get here. We were told they were about 10 minutes out.
I think we'll go ahead and proceed and get started.
May I approach the bench? Your Honor, TDOC Correctional Administrator Deborah K. Johnson lost her life in the line of duty on August 7th, 2019, at the hands of inmate Curtis Ray Watson. This occurred at her on-site home located on the grounds of West Tennessee State Penitentiary. The facts of the case would have shown as follows. Curtis Ray Watson was an inmate at West Tennessee State Penitentiary serving a 15-year sentence for especially aggravated kidnapping out of Henry County Circuit Court docket number 15180. This sentence expiration date is May 13th of 2025, according to TDOC records. He had been granted trustee status and was assigned to the mechanic shop. He was allowed to move around the grounds of West Tennessee State Penitentiary in the performance of his work duties. On the morning of August 7, 2019, Curtis Ray Watson was released on work detail. At approximately 7:30 a.m., he advised Correctional Officer Austin Jones that he needed to go get some door hinges. Officer Jones told him that he could go get them, and Curtis Ray Watson left the shop. TDOC employee Bobby Busey would have testified that Curtis Ray Watson came asking about door hinges at the carpenter shop an hour later at approximately 8:30 a.m. Inmate Robert Walden would have testified that he saw Curtis Ray Watson beating on the front door of Deborah Johnson's home between 8 and 8:30 a.m. He would have also have testified that he saw the golf cart parked, which was a water plant cart, parked by her home. We know that Deborah Johnson was still alive at 8:10 that morning because she was talking on the phone at the time. Her car was also in the driveway. Correctional officers Kenneth Edwards and David Shelton both saw the same golf cart at Deborah Johnson's home around the same time. They had noticed that Curtis Ray Watson was not at the shop where he should have been and had gone looking for him. Officer Edwards knocked on the doors of Deborah Johnson's home and checked that they were locked. He did not get any answer. He was called by Officer Shelton and informed that Curtis Ray Watson had been located. He thought the matter had been resolved. There were other individuals that would have testified to seeing Curtis Ray Watson on the same golf cart at Deborah Johnson's residence at the same time. Those would have been construction workers, Jonathan Blake, Mike Weaver, and Ricky Thacker. They were working on a construction site close to Deborah Johnson's home. Correctional Officer Shelton and Patrick Hankins located Curtis Watson on the access road at approximately 8:45 a.m. They asked what he was doing. Curtis Watson held up a bag and said, "Picking up beads." He was asked by these officers why he was at Deborah Johnson's home. Curtis Ray Watson told them that he was checking on a mower that needed to be welded. He was told to go back to the shop, and they followed him back there. The officers left immediately after, as Officer Shelton had to drop off Officer Hankins at another location on the prison grounds. Inmate Zachary West would have testified that he was washing tractors at the shop, and Curtis Watson came up to him and said he needed a tractor. Inmate West would have also testified that he initially told Curtis Watson no, that he wasn't done washing the tractors yet, and at which time Curtis Watson went inside the shop for a short period of time, then came back out. Curtis Ray Watson jumped on a wet tractor, asked to borrow inmate West's vest, and left the shop on the tractor, heading toward the main road. A pair of white boxers were later recovered from a trash can inside the shop. There was a tool accountability search done later by TDOC, at which time they discovered that a box cutter was missing from the place it should have been. Inmate Robert Walden and Correctional Officer Barry Collier would have both testified to seeing Curtis Watson on this tractor on the main road in the potato field. Correctional Officer Barry Collier asked him what he was doing, and Curtis Watson responded that he was checking the clutch on the tractor. Routinely, all the inmates out on work detail report back to the shop at 10 a.m. to eat lunch and to be ready for count at 10:30 a.m. Curtis Watson was missing from that count. It was at around the same time that prison officials started trying to locate Deborah Johnson. Warden Trinity Mentor was contacted by former Warden Jonathan Lebo and asked and advised that he had not heard from Deborah Johnson, and that was unusual for Deborah. Warden Mentor, Director McKinney, and now Warden Stanley Dickerson all went to check on Deborah Johnson. The front door was locked, and they had to go around back to get in. They found her laying on her back with her head at the foot of the bed. Her shirt was open, and she was bare-chested. Her bra and undershirt had been cut open, and the buttons on her white shirt popped off. She had no clothes on from the waist down. Medical was called immediately, and when they arrived, they discovered a USB charging cord wrapped around her neck. There would have been testimony from medical staff that this cord had been wrapped around her neck 3 times. They also would have testified that they did not cut Deborah Johnson's upper clothing off. They were not able to resuscitate Deborah Johnson, and she was declared deceased by County Medical Examiner Investigator Adam Haynes at 11:40 a.m., and her home became an active crime scene. Correctional officers were still searching for Curtis Ray Watson during this time. They located the tractor that Curtis Watson had been seen driving in a field approximately 2 miles from the prison. His inmate ID and inmate West's vest were found with the tractor. A manhunt ensued, and Curtis Watson was captured on August 11, 2019. While Curtis Watson was on the run, having escaped from West Tennessee State Penitentiary, he broke into a storage building owned by David and Lori Green and took various items, including the camouflage clothing that he was later captured in. He also went on the property of Harvey Taylor and stole some food. This led to his capture, as he was recorded on Mr. Taylor's Ring camera, giving law enforcement a location for their search for Curtis Ray Watson. TBI was called to be the lead investigators on this case. They gathered evidence which included numerous items that were sent for DNA testing. They also collected shoe prints from the crime scene and compared those to the boots of Curtis Ray Watson that were on his feet at the time of his capture. The TBI lab matched 2 partial shoe impressions to the left and right boot of Curtis Ray Watson. They also conducted interviews of witnesses. When they interviewed inmate Zachary West, he advised them of an incident that had occurred a week prior to the murder of Deborah Johnson. She had come by the shop to get air put in her tires. Curtis Ray Watson assisted her. He came back in the shop and told inmate West that she wanted him. He knew she lived in a state house and that he could pull up acting like he was doing some work, have sex with her, and go back to work. An autopsy was performed on Deborah Johnson, and there would have been testimony at trial that the cause of her death was strangulation. She had multiple purple linear contusions on her neck, petechial hemorrhages of her eyes, facial petechia, contusions to her tongue, evidence from Deborah Johnson's bedroom. Results from the DNA testing would have been presented at trial as follows. Why STR DNA profile of Curtis Watson matched DNA on Deborah Johnson's cell phone and the DNA from the vaginal swab taken from Deborah Johnson's body. The DNA from the nail clippings obtained from Deborah Johnson's body matched Curtis Watson's DNA. The DNA from the nail scrapings taken from Deborah Johnson's body matched Curtis Watson's DNA. Curtis Watson's DNA was matched to the white boxers found in the shop trash can. TBI Special Agents Chuck Baker and Matt Pugh interviewed Curtis Watson after his capture. Prior to Curtis Ray Watson requesting a lawyer, he told the agents that he can't seem to stay out of trouble for some reason. He told the agents that he can't handle stress and it makes him think bad. He admitted that he had been under a lot of stress while in prison. So, Your Honor, we believe the facts that we just presented to the court would sustain a finding of guilt by a jury. However, we're before the court today on an agreement that has been reached between the state and defense counsel. The state had filed a death penalty notice in this case, and we are allowing Mr. Watson to plead to life without parole. And the plea agreement would be as follows. With regard to count 3, there were 4 counts of first-degree murder that were charged. The first count was a premeditation count, and the subsequent counts were felony murder with a separate underlying felony. He is pleading to count 3, which is the felony murder in perpetration of a rape. And the sentence for that count will be life without parole. And per the plea forms, the defense is entering this plea as a nolo contendere plea on this count. He will also be pleading to count 6, which is the especially aggravated burglary count. And he will receive 2 years at 35% consecutive to the Henry County sentence that he is currently serving in 15180. Also, count 3 will be consecutive to Henry County conviction as well in 15180. He will be pleading to count 8, which is an aggravated rape count, receiving 25 years at 100%, and that will be consecutive to the life without parole. This will also require sex offender registry per 4035-501I, and also will be served at 100% per that code section. And it also runs consecutive to the Henry County sentence that he is currently serving. He will be pleading to count 10, which is the felony escape count, 4 years at 35%, consecutive to the sentence that he's now serving for Henry County. He will be pleading to count 11, which is a theft over 10,000 count. That is for the theft of the tractor that he took from prison property. He will receive 10 years at 35% with regard to that, concurrent to the other counts, but consecutive to the Henry County sentence. He will plead to a burglary count in count 12, receive 8 years at 35%, again concurrent with the other counts, but consecutive to Henry County, and also to count 13, which is a theft under 1,000 count. Those were for the going into the storage trailer owned by Lori and David Green and stealing various items from that storage trailer. He will also be pleading to counts 14 and 15, which is an aggravated criminal trespass and theft under 1,000 count, which are both misdemeanor offenses, and he will be sentenced to 1129 concurrent with all counts, but consecutive to Henry County. I will state that the DA's office has met with the Johnson family and on several occasions, and also had several conversations with the family and about this plea agreement today, and they are in agreement with the settlement of this case on these terms. We'd ask the court to accept the plea.
Your Honor, on behalf of the defendant in this matter, we stipulate there is a factual basis and I have been through thousands of pages of discovery which was provided to the state. We're satisfied after our review, this is a prudent decision on behalf of our client, and ask you to accept this plea.
If you'd stand, raise your right hand, take the oath, please. Best you can. You solemnly swear or affirm testimony you give in this cause to be the truth, so help you God.
Yes, Your Honor.
State your age and education, please.
I am 46 years old, and I have a GED from West Tennessee State Prison.
You've been charged, as been outlined by the District Attorney General, with multiple offenses, and I've been handed a form or a paper that indicates you want to waive your right to a trial by jury, to enter a plea of guilty, has been outlined, and to waive your right to appeal. It's actually broken down into 5 forms, all of which appear and have your signature on them. Have you been over these papers with your attorney?
Yes, Your Honor.
You feel like you understand what you're doing here today?
Yes, Your Honor.
You understand then that if you wanted to, you could plead not guilty, have a trial where the state would have the obligation of proving your guilt beyond a reasonable doubt to 12 jurors. This case is a little bit different because the state had filed notice that they would seek to have the death penalty if you were found guilty by a jury of first-degree murder. It would be up to a jury as to what the punishment would be. The jury could find you, if they found you guilty of first-degree murder, they could find you guilty and then sentence you to either life without parole, or to the death penalty. And that would be strictly up to a jury. For that reason, you've had additional counsel, additional funding, additional investigation, and so forth, which the law provides. But you're waiving the right to have a jury make that determination. You're also waiving the right to have a jury make any determination with regard to your guilt or innocence as to the other charges for which you're entering a plea. Under the plea arrangement, there are a number of accounts that are also being dismissed. You've been over all that with your attorney, and you feel satisfied that you understand that.
Yes, Your Honor.
That is, you're waiving the right to have a jury make these decisions. Your attorneys would be available at a jury trial to cross-examine witnesses against you and to call witnesses in your behalf. If you wanted to testify and be a witness in your own behalf in front of a jury, you'd have a right to do so. If you did not want to testify, no one could call you as a witness. After hearing the proof, the jury would make a decision. If the jury found you not guilty of one or more of these offenses, then you would be free of that charge. If the jury found you guilty, you could appeal that to a higher court. However, by going through this proceeding today, there will not be a trial by jury and will not be an appeal. This will be your day in court. Understand that?
Yes, sir.
You're under oath. The answers you give to these questions have to be truthful. If the state asks you any questions about your involvement in these offenses, you have to answer that truthfully also. A false answer will be used in a prosecution for perjury against you. I understand the plea arrangement to be that you're entering a plea of no contest or no contendery in count 3. That's first-degree murder during the perpetration of a felony offense. The state would recommend a sentence of life without parole. Is that your understanding of that count?
Yes, Your Honor.
And in count 6, you're entering a plea to a B felony as a multiple offender. The state's recommending a sentence of 20 years in that count. In count 8, you're entering a plea to an A felony, and the state's recommend as a multiple offender. And the state's recommending 25 years. That's at 100%. And at count 10, you're entering a plea to an E felony. The state's recommending 4 years as a multiple offender. And in count 11, you're entering a plea to a C felony. The state's recommending a sentence of 10 years. Excuse me, again, as a multiple offender. And in count 12, you're entering a plea to a D felony. as a multiple offender. The state's recommending a sentence of 8 years. And in count 14 to a misdemeanor again, 1129, and the same in count 15. All of these would serve concurrently to each other for an effective sentence of life without parole, which would serve consecutively to the sentence you're currently serving out of Henry County. Is all that your understanding of the plea arrangement?
Yes, sir.
You know, there is one change. There's a count with regard to the aggravated rape that should be 25 years. That count is to run consecutive as opposed to concurrent with count 3.
Yeah, I apologize, I see that. It runs consecutive to count 3 and also consecutive to the Henry County.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the area of plea actually of no contest and no contendory in one, and then a plea of guilty, I believe, in the other counts. Is all that your understanding?
Yes, Your Honor.
The public defender has been representing you while the charges have been pending, also represented by Mr. Huffman. The public defender's office, you've had 2 attorneys, main attorney with that, Mr. Stockton, Mr. Whitehead. Are you satisfied with the representation that you've received by your attorneys?
Yes, sir.
You feel like you've had enough time to meet with an attorney to discuss the case in any defense to all these charges?
Yes, Your Honor.
You understand that shortly by your plea, that's the strongest evidence available against you. And by entering the plea, you're waiving the requirement to have witnesses brought into court to confront and cross-examine. This will result in a conviction for various felony offenses. Has anyone forced you to enter a plea?
No, Your Honor.
Your willingness then to enter the plea is as a result of talking you've had with your attorney, because there is a factual basis for me to accept these pleas. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
With regard to the charge then in count 3, that is first-degree felony murder, that is over about August the 7th of 2019, knowingly and recklessly killing Deborah Johnson during the perpetration of rape here in Lauderdale County. I understand you're entering a plea of no contender. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
With regard to the charge in count 6, of especially aggravated burglary, over about August the 7th of 2019, without the effective consent of Ms. Johnson, the occupant of the habitation, entering that habitation, not open to the public, had an intent to commit assault and did cause serious bodily injury. I understand you're entering the plea of guilty. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
With regard to the charge in count 8, aggravated rape with bodily injury, over about August the 7th of 2019, sexually penetrating and causing bodily injury to Deborah Johnson here in Lauderdale County. I understand you're entering a plea of guilt of no contender. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And in count 10, for felony escape, on about August the 7th of 2019, having been lawfully held due to a conviction out of Henry County, the West Tennessee Penitentiary, and escaping, that is leaving without permission. How do you plead?
Guilty.
And with regard to the charge in count 11, August the 7th, 2019, theft of property, that is taking a work tractors that belonged to the penitentiary. I understand you're entering a plea of guilty, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And count 12 for burglary of a building on between August the 7th. Is not open to the public with the intent to commit theft, burglary of a building. I understand you're entering a plea of guilty, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And in count 13, theft of property. That was between August 7th and August 11th, 2019. Taking a jacket, some pants, belt, backpack, and some other items that didn't belong to David and Lori Green. I'm standing here in Lauderdale County, you're entering a plea of guilty, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Count 14. Aggravated criminal trespass. Again, a misdemeanor. Between, this is on August the 11th of 2019, entering the property of Harvey Taylor without his consent, knowing that his presence may cause fear for the safety of his family. I understand you're entering a plea of guilty, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And in count 15, theft of property less than $1,000 on between August 11th of 2019. Taking some food items that belong to Harvey Taylor without his consent. I understand you're entering a plea of guilty, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And the court having determined you're competent to enter a plea, that you understand what you're doing, accepts the pleas of guilty in counts 3 and count 8, where you entered a plea of no contest. The court accepts the stipulated statement of facts for finding of guilt to the plea of no contendere. Do you have any questions about this proceeding today?
No, Your Honor.
The court sentences you to a little prearrangement to life without parole in count 3 for the first degree murder of the victim, Ms. Johnson. And that's consecutive to the Henry County conviction. In count 8, the court sentences you to 25 years at 100%, consecutive to the life without parole, and also consecutive to the Henry County conviction for the aggravated rape of Ms. Johnson. And in count 6, on your plea of guilty to the B felony as a multiple offender to 20 years consecutive to sentence you're serving, count 10 to 4 years, count 11 to 10 years, count 12 to 8 years, and the counts 12, 14, and 15 to 11 months and 29 days. Anything about the proceeding today that you have a question about at all?
No, Your Honor.
Any statements you want to make?
I just want to apologize to everybody,
All right.
the Johnson family and the state of Tennessee and all the officers at the West High Penitentiary. My apologies. Please forgive me for everything I've ever done. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Just to provide this information for the rules for every report.
Yes.
Short recess.
Sure.
Thank you.
Court's in recess in a few minutes.